I'm glad that the rain went away and the sun decided to peek its head out a little bit. Thanks to the speakers that put times in their schedules to speak to us on this important issue today on such short notice. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge we are meeting today in Slave Lake, located within the ancestral and traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of this area. This land has been and will continue to be home to the Cree, Dene, and other First Nations and the Métis within the boundaries of Treaty 8. We also wish to acknowledge the traditional knowledge holders and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. My name is Ali Moallam, and I am currently the president of the Slave Lake Muslim Society. Over the past week, I have had lots of phone calls and text messages asking what people can do for our Muslim families. We have had people leave flowers at the mosque and send cards with kind messages. We decided to hold this event today to speak up and to speak out against racism and bigotry within our community, our province, and our country. Because of a senseless act of prejudice and racism, a London, Ontario Muslim family has been torn apart on an evening walk because of how they looked and what they believed. The Slave Lake Muslim Society is made up of approximately 80 families within our region. A lot of them have been in Slave Lake for many years, going back to 1960s. They are mostly from the Middle East and South Asia. The Muslim community consists of members from Bangladesh, Egypt, India, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Pakistan, Palestine, Sri Lanka, Syria, Philippines, Yemen, and most recently from Morocco and Tunisia as well. Our members are health professionals, lawyers, engineers, teachers, RCMP, business owners, and community leaders, just to name a few. We love and volunteer throughout this region. Our children are in dance, hockey, baseball, taekwondo, and more. We work where you work, we shop where you shop, and our community and our children go to school with your children. We are integrated within this community. I would like to now welcome from the Al Amin Mosque in Slave Lake, Imam Mohamad Salman.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you everybody for coming. I'd like to start by reciting a few verses from the Holy Quran, followed by a translation and a short talk. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, praise to God, Lord of the worlds, ruler of the day of judgment. You alone we worship, and you alone we seek for help. Guide us to the straight path. The path of those who have received your grace, not the path of those who earned your anger, nor those who wander astray. Amen. I'd also like to acknowledge what Ali acknowledged, the traditional owners of this land, and pay the respect for the past and current elders of this community. And acknowledge that we are meeting on Treaty 8 territory, and acknowledge all the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who have lived, traveled, and gathered on these lands for thousands of years. We are here at the Slave Lake Town Office. As we know, the suffering of the Absalom family due to the terrorist crimes that were committed in London, Ontario. We are very pleased to have our municipality, provincial and federal representatives and our community at large. And we thank them for taking this matter seriously and joining us today on a short notice. I thank you for coming out to stand in solidarity with the Muslim community. This is the time where we must stand together. The Absalom family is just like any other family. The grandmother, the father, the mother, the daughter, and the son. The son who is 9 years old and currently in the hospital. Islamophobia is not isolated to this one incident, but rather it is in an alarming pattern. So how long can we stay silent while these attacks continue? In Alberta alone, in the past 6 months, there has been 14 recorded cases of attacks against Muslim women. We have to be active, and we have to hold our politicians to account, the media and the community at large, to come together and find a solution. Dear community members, we will stand in solidarity with other communities that are struggling as well. Just because we are grieving today, the Absalom family, we cannot stop grieving for the 215 children that we yet don't know their names. We grieve as much for these children as we grieve for the Absalom family. The grandmother, the father Salman, the mother Madiha, and the daughter Yumna. It's the same hate that killed the 215 children. It's the same hate that killed the Absalom family. And it's the same hate that perhaps killed other children that have not been accounted for. What's the date today? 2021. June 15, 2021. Yet a Muslim woman in Quebec is not allowed to wear her headscarf and be a teacher at a public French school. June 15, 2021, a Jewish man who's wearing a kippah is not allowed to be a prosecutor in Quebec. June 15, 2021, a Sikh man who's wearing a turban is not allowed to be a judge in Quebec. This is not the 1950s. This is not the 1930s. This is June 15, 2021. Let us look at the root of the problem. I thank our provincial government for offering grants for security, for vulnerable places of worship and non-profit organizations, but that is only a band-aid to the solution. The root of the problem is the education of the people. The root of the problem is bringing people together rather than bringing them apart. Especially during the times of elections. when we find polarizing issues and we walk on thin ice so we can gather more votes during the election. But the fall of these polarizing matters result in communities losing individuals, allowing those who are hiding behind the scenes to come up front and cause harm to minorities. We have been here before. January 29, 2017, when the massacre at the Quebec Mosque. It happened before, September 12, 2020, at the IMO Mosque, when the caretaker of the
take a moment and thanks Ali for putting this together. I know Lisa was reaching out to me on the weekend, and Tara, and it's kind of the theme of things lately is there's a lot of frustration out there, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of embarrassment to be a Canadian these days. And I think it comes from people seeing these things that keep happening and not knowing how to deal with it. I was actually here in 2017 when we held a vigil, and the Imam Mohamad had some great words to share that day, and I think back, it's almost 5 years ago now, and what has changed? And there's still all this hatred, there's still all this anger that exists out there. And I have to wonder, why does it happen? And what do we do differently? I think that's a question I get lots in the last couple of weeks, whether it's these acts of violence, whether, there's with the things with the residential school, the 215 children that found in Kamloops. I think we're all struggling to understand, what do we do? What do we change? How do we do something differently? And that's a big topic. Racism is a huge topic. It's a big thing that many people have had to deal with for generations. I don't know how you fix that overnight. And I do want to say that I truly believe part of the reason that we end up in these circumstances, and the man talked about it, is that education is a huge part. But I also think connection is a big part. And I think as people, the last 18 months have taught us that that connection with people is more important than it has ever been. And you have to connect with people. And as great as technology is, and allows us to connect to people across the world, sometimes it prevents us from connecting with the people that are sitting right beside us. And so I will say that, one of the things I think as we move forward as a nation, as a people, is that we have to focus on that education, and we have to focus on that connection, to learn from each other. Because every time we say something, every time we hear something, every time we don't correct things that we know are wrong, we are part of the problem, and we're not fixing the solution. And so we have to stand up, and it's going to be uncomfortable in a lot of situations to stand up and say, that's not cool. It's not how it's supposed to be. I'll finish up with a story, and I love the story. I use it a few times. I'm going to try and do this out of my head, just like I do everything out of my head. But there's an old man, and he's walking along the beach after a storm. And he comes around a bluff, and there's a little boy out there on the beach. And as far as he can see for miles, starfish. Thousands and thousands and thousands of starfish along the beach. And this little boy is picking up these starfish and he's throwing them into the ocean. And the old man walks up to the little boy and he says, little boy, he says, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm trying to save these starfish and throwing them back into the ocean before they all dry out and they die. And because they won't survive until the next tide comes. And the old man says to him, really, what difference does that make? And as the little boy picks up another one, throws it in the ocean, and he says, well, it makes a difference for that one. And so that story has always really resonated with me, and I think there's two parts to that. One is that, the message I would like to share with everyone today is that there is so much good all around us. This event happening today it symbolizes the good that exists in the world. It was only less than 2 weeks ago, hundreds of people shut down the streets as we walked here to stand up against racism, against the issues that continue to exist in Canada. And so I know that there's good and there's hope and there's so many awesome things happening around us, and sometimes We just need to focus on those things. And so I encourage you, as you go about your days and you're trying to understand what to do and where to go and where to focus your energy, I say look for those starfish. Look for those great things that you can do. Be kind to people, reach out to people, learn about people, love people. Because I truly believe that that's where success is going to achieve. That's how difference is going to happen. And it starts with you. It starts with yourself. It starts with the conversations you have with your children. And I think actually a lot of adults out there need to learn more than the children do. So that's what I'm going to focus my energy on. So in an effort to continue to learn more about culture and do better at my job, I leave you in closing. I was practicing this with Ali there before, but Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. Thank you.
I'm the Deputy Reeve of the Municipal District of Lesser Slave River, and it's an honor to be standing here with my neighbors today. And thank you, Tyler. It's always inspiring to listen to you speak without notes, from your heart. You're doing well. I want to say, on behalf of my fellow councillors and our Reeve, Marie Carrick, we share the community's grief and confusion as we're all coming to terms with this recent crime in London, Ontario, that left 4 members of a Muslim family dead, 4 individuals with hopes, fears, ambitions, loves and losses, just like every one of us standing here today. 4 people just like us, not 4 people different from us. Just like you and me, but they lost their lives to hatred. The person who committed that crime will soon be forgotten, but we're going to struggle to process this act and what it represents. The Municipal District of Lesser Slave River stands with you, united in our condemnation of a hate-fueled deed. We all have to stand together and uproot and eliminate intolerance wherever it continues to thrive. And sadly, those roots run deep. And shamefully, as we have just heard from the Imam, they grow within our own soil here in Alberta. Issues like racism and religious intolerance and other big issues that we grapple with, they can seem too big and too complex for us to tackle, but they're not. Everything that we do begins in our own homes and in our own hearts. We each have the power to contemplate new ideas, to accommodate identities and ideologies that are different from our own, and to respect those who are different from us, in whatever way that difference may or may not present itself. And we each have the power to reject ugly notions and speak out against hatred and racism and violence. And as Mayor Warman just said, sometimes it's hard to find those words and to learn the words and to practice those words. So when the opportunity comes for us to use our powerful words, we can use our powerful words. And if we possess the power to impact social change for the better, as I believe we do, then we all have a social obligation to do so. And that's the only way we're going to move forward in a meaningful way. I want to just take a moment to just say on a personal note, Slave Lake region is my chosen community. I came here 25 years ago for a very short contract. I wasn't supposed to stay here, but I chose to stay here because this is a beautiful community and it's a great place to live, to work, to raise a family. And I really deeply hope that it continues to be that way and that we make it even better day by day. I know the Slave Lake region as a place where neighbors care about each other and where people can get involved in good causes together. And where if you work in those good causes, you can make a big difference at the grassroots level, and that resonates to other communities. And we set a great example here in the Slave Lake region of working together. So let's all commit ourselves to doing what we can as volunteers and members of civil society, doing the right thing. I'm proud to have raised my own daughter here in the Slave Lake region, and I feel confident to have sent her out into the world knowing that she will be able to draw on the lessons that she learned in this community, being raised in this community, surrounded by these neighbors. So thank you for that. And I want to thank the Slave Lake Muslim Society right now for organizing this vigil, for helping us to become a stronger community by setting a helpful example of tolerance in action. Thank you for all coming out here tonight and for helping to make our region stronger and better and to continue in peace. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Ali and everyone who helped him organize this important gathering today. I'd also like to thank all the members from the different levels of government who took time out of their schedule to come here and to speak today to everyone who turned out. And of course, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to come out here and show that this is a very important topic that we're trying to discuss and hear a bit about today. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share a few words. I can't claim to understand quite what it must be like to live your life knowing that you may be a target just because of your religion, color of your skin, or race. It's not something that I have faced. But it's not something that anyone should have to face. No one in our country should have to fear for their safety. No one should have to fear for their children's safety. Not in Canada and not in Alberta. Acts of terrorism like this one in London, Ontario, remind us, however, that such fear may be warranted. And that is a failure that we must bear. And this must be our call to action. Hate must be challenged. Hate must be called out. Hate must be made completely unacceptable. Canadians, I think, generally like to pride ourselves on being accepting and respectful people. I don't think we live up to those virtues unless every Canadian can live without fear. It is up to those of us who have not had to face the fear to dismantle it for those that do. And as someone who hasn't had to face that fear, part of that duty falls on myself. I have to step up, and I will. I owe it to the memory of Yamna, Madia, Talak, and Salman, and to the future of Fayez. I most definitely cannot imagine what he has gone through over the past number of days. As is said among the Muslim community, Kuda Hafez, may God protect you. Thank you.
I remember when I wasn't even the MP yet, I was the candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada, and the Muslim Association of Slave Lake reached out to me and just to address some of the concerns that they had, and I want to thank them for that. I was an auto mechanic from Barrhead, and my friends always tell me, Arnold, there's not a wrench big enough to fix Ottawa. But I said, we gotta try. And so here we are today. Some of the problems that we face here in Canada, I'm trying to solve. One of the issues that I work on a lot in Parliament is ensuring that the justice system gets the desired results, that has a victim focus, and I'm confident and hopeful that our justice system will bring to justice and bring justice for the victims in this case and for the communities that are all affected. We are all Canadians, and I think that that is something that we should be able to say with our heads held high. And I think that the last few months have challenged us in that, for sure. And so I want to leave everyone here today with a quote from Mr. Diefenbaker, and I hope that as we go forward, I hope that no matter where you've come from and have come to call Canada your home, or if you're a First Nations Canadian, that you can too take this quote from John Diefenbaker and say it and use it as kind of our model. And so I wrote it down because I don't have it memorized, but I'd like to read it. It's John Diefenbaker when he was the Prime Minister. It said, "I am a Canadian, a free Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship in my own way, free to stand for what I think is right, free to oppose what I believe to be wrong, free to choose who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and all mankind." And I hope that each and every one of us can take that pledge upon our lips and to truly feel that that is what it means to be Canadian. And so I want to thank Ali for putting this on. I want to thank all the speakers for coming out and commemorating this and being part of this vigil. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out today. Go look up that quote from Mr. Diefenbaker.
Down upon for wearing a hijab, a turban, a kippah, or something else. We are all beautiful, we are kind, we are welcoming. We have to ensure our communities continue to represent these, and that we also continue to speak out against racism, against hate, including Islamophobia. Fighting hatred is one issue that we can all agree on. While we all need to come together as a country to take a firm stand against violence and hate, our leaders must oppose intolerance in both words and in actions. The incident in London, Ontario that left a 9-year-old boy in hospital with no mother, no father, no grandmother, and no sister is not a one-off. Edmonton Mayor Don Iveson said it best. This isn't just a Muslim tragedy. It's not even just a family tragedy. This is a Canadian tragedy. Incidents like this happen every day to every faith, and most of the time they go unreported. So thank you very much for coming. Thanks for supporting us. We ask that in lieu of buying flowers or cards, that you instead contribute to the family's GoFundMe page. Details are on our social media post, or please come see me directly. Thank you very much.